and you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually, but now you've got $4. Go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account. And you look for the attributes of what is money? What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. Is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1's worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually, but now you've got $4. Go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account.
Good evening. This is PG, Patriot Gallery, Leah and Michelle, ResistanceChicks mom. Thank you for watching this evening. Now, I'm a little nervous. I haven't done this for quite a long time. I have a brand new computer. I had to set everything up all over again. So everything on XSplit, that's what you watch this video on. It's a multi-streaming software. So I had to reset everything. It took a long time. Besides, writing the blog took a long time. So let's try and jump in. If you'd like to follow along, in the description is the address for Isaiah 58 Ministries. I write everything down because I'm not just going to give you what I have to say. If you've been with me, it seems like I say the same thing over and over and over again. But actually, I get all these people from all over the world. What are they saying? If we're all saying the same thing, and Declaration of Independence says this is self-evident, but different people need it explained in different ways, and it'll break your mind free. I mean, sometimes I have headaches because I learned something new. I break a nerve because when you have a lie in your brain, it makes a nerve in your brain, and sometimes you get headaches when we find out the truth because you just broke a nerve in your mind. And see, that's why it's so important to tell the truth all the time, because you harm people with lies. And that's why you come to know the Lord and you say, God, forgive me all my sins. And you're supposed to go to those people you have harmed in your lifetime and tell them the truth, confess what you've done, so they can be set free and you make amends in any way you can. I think it was Zacchaeus. He said, Lord, I'm going to go to everybody. He was a tax collector. And if I have ripped anybody off or stolen from somebody, I will pay them back double. And Jesus said, today salvation has come to this home because he got it. I did wrong and I have to make up for it. And that way he doesn't go to jail or anything for what he did wrong. But justice is done and God's kingdom is there on earth. And so when you saw me open up with my picture of who I am, it says, Patriot Gallery, enter the kingdom of God as a high priest. And this other one is the same thing, but it shows pictures of it. And it's all by divine design. God declares, I know my plans for you, plans to bless you and keep you safe. And then there's also this self-evident of the Declaration of Independence is behind that. All the stuff that I say is self-evident, but public school, you had to join their army. And they took away your sound mind and replaced it with what they want you to do as their army, to work for them as an army. And you lost all your freedoms as soon as you went to public school. Now, the Silver Squeeze happened in 2021. We were a major part of that. And we try to get people to join. We got a lot of people to join that for us. And we made a significant difference. And I was going, oh my gosh, we can do this. And every people were saying, we could do this, because the people who know about gold and silver know if we get off this silver taken off the market, we could break the banks. We could break their monopoly and their hold on everybody. And then I saw Alex Jones, he was at a ski resort, and he's like, we could do this. And a lot of people thought we could do this. And what we didn't realize is it's going to take like 5 years to accomplish this task. And 2025 has actually been 5 years since then. It was in February, it was like January 30th, the weekend of like January 30, 31 or something. In February, there was this huge run on gold and on silver, basic silver, because it's so inexpensive. And so that's what we'll be talking about this evening. I'll introduce myself a little bit. Revelation 6, 5, and 6, PG here. Jesus spoke to me after I read the very anointed ordained by God, because God ordains governments, the Coinage Act of 1792. Jesus spoke to me to buy 3 flour sacks with a silver dime years ago, and I could see the whole thing. Now, Jim with Horses, one of my favorite shows, and he has this black horse, and it's a Percheron, a breed of draft horse that originated in Huzine River Valley in western France, part of the former Perche province from which the breed takes its name. Usually gray or black in color. I've only seen them black. I've never seen them gray. I guess some of them do have dapples. That's round little circles. Percherons are well muscled, and known for their intelligence and willingness to work. And we'll go into 3 minutes, and you see I was watching this, I guess it was this morning actually, I just added this, and you can see the horse breathing. And you see his breath, it's very cold, he's in upper New York. And the steam is coming out of his nostrils. And I'm like, this is a perfect example, what you would imagine, of the Revelation's black horse. And Revelations 5 and 6, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And beheld a low black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hands. And balances are for scales. Okay, for weighing. They used to weigh your gold and silver to make sure you're paying people correctly. It's where they kept money. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts, and measure wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Now the oil is the anointing of God, and the wine the blood of Jesus. And barley is a lesser wheat, so man would eat, you can eat barley of course, but the best wheat is a whole wheat, and it's more expensive than the barley, because the barley you can use to feed your animals. And so the Lord gave me 3 flour sacks to buy, and a silver dime in my vision. It just happened so quickly I can't really describe it. And so I'm going to show you Ken here at 3 minutes. I'll just start here. These horses are huge. They can get up to 2,600 pounds, and they can get up to 18 hands. That's taller than a like 6'5" man. And so we'll play Ken here a minute. This working horses with Jim.
Get it.
I just to see the picture of a huge black horse. He's bigger than Jim. And watch the air. See his steam coming out of his nostrils. I thought this is so prophetic, you could say. And that is
Good morning, everybody.
That is a big horse. I think that
today we decided
2,000 pounds.
We need to do a little bit of work with clipping reins, amongst a bunch of other things. So this morning already, I've clipped Earl and Bill and Duke and Baron, and I have kicked Earl and Baron outside, along with our 2 fillies, Bree and June. They're all outside. So then I decided to bring in Ken, which is this big old black horse right here. Bring him in and bring Lady in also into the straight stalls. And we will get them clipped up. It's been quite a while since we've clipped their manes. And it's also been a while since we've even brushed them. Brenda went through and brushed them somewhat this morning. But they were kind of dirty because they're outside and in pens most of the time, so they're laying down in wetter grounds. And until we get some nice snow cover, that's going to continue. Although it looks like we are starting to get a little bit of snow even now. Things are white again, at least. So there's a couple horses eating hay out of their feeder. So now I need some sort of a footstool to do my clipping the way I clip my manes. So footstools have kind of been a sour subject of late. So I'm going to take this chair right here and put it in for my footstool, because my actual footstool that we bought just a few months ago now is ruined. It would take quite a bit to get that straightened back out again so it's usable and safe. So I had put that behind Earl the other day because I had to get up behind him. And didn't he back up? Not trying to, he just backed up slowly and just stepped right on that and kind of squished it right up. And then I was trimming Baron's mane this morning, and didn't he swing over and not see that chair there that I was using for a footstool and step on that and smash that. So now I have to be very careful with my last chair to be able to get this done without them smashing this chair also. So I guess I'm got to go find myself another footstool now and buy a nice one that we can use. But it doesn't matter what you use. If you buy a footstool, these big guys, if they back on them or step on them accidentally, it's going to get squished. So you got to be very careful where you put them and make sure you realize what the horses are going to do. Anyways, let's clip up Ken and Lady. And I think after I clip up Ken, I'm going to put him right in the shoeing stocks because he has shoes on him that need to come off. And I'll talk a little bit about shoeing and shoes in a minute. Okay. So Ken is a horse that is generally quite laid back and easygoing horse, but he has not been worked for quite some time now. And because of that, I could easily see him spooking and backing up and just being afraid of the clippers, which I've clipped him many, many times. He usually stands about perfect, but today, under the circumstances, I could see him doing something stupid. But let's turn him on and see what happens. Here you go. Okay. Yep, come here. Okay. Yep, come here.
I had to laugh. I started laughing so loud when both the chairs broke on him. And it really shows not about horses at all, really. I mean, I do have a part in it with horses because the Lord said that He made the land for horses. But I just started laughing. That was really funny. And it represented the black horse of Revelation. Now, black horse of Revelation, everybody says it's death. Actually, that's for a harvest, a huge harvest. So let's everybody become Zacchaeus, and everybody goes to their neighbor and says, I did this, or your friend, or your brother, your sister, your mom, or dad, I lied here, or I took this, and you make amends for it, whatever. That's a huge harvest of souls coming to know Christ. The black horse, and then we become fair, and we become just. And that's what a penny is actually a silver dime. It's called a denarius in the Roman times. It's a man's wage. And when they wrote the Bible, they didn't have another word for it, so they just said penny. But it's just a silver dime. And also, at that time, pennies were made of silver. And so it's more of a silver dime. So we won't get into details like that. But it's about people being fair and just weights and balances, and just weights and scales. The problem we have in America is fraud. Blackrock is not wealthy. We all hear Blackrock like owns everything now. Because in the first video, if they're always borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and we all get behind, and we all work for the company or work for somebody, the people at the top are just going to get bigger and bigger and own everything. You have monopolies, right? But they did that using fraudulent money that doesn't exist. They printed it out of nowhere. So they really didn't use real money, so it's really stolen. So BlackRock or whoever you want, Vanguard, whoever, they're not wealthy. All they have written down on paper is stolen from around the world. In this blog, we attack BlackRock and other thieves' number one weapon of the state of war. And you've all heard of the art of war. Well, we'll get into that. They have declared against 8 billion people in the world. We, in this blog, solve the problem using God's weapon, and God's weapon is justice, and that comes through Jesus Christ. You can't have justice without God. And that's what Romans 13 is all about. The American Christian and we the people is about the government and obeying the government. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God, and the powers that are ordained of God. Romans 13:1. Wait a minute, I don't know why I'm having a hard time with this. Like I said, I haven't done this for a while. So, how do I get back there? I wanted to go back where I was, and I'm not getting an X anywhere to get me out of here. So we solve the problem using God's weapons, justice. They have to return all they have stolen. Get your life right with God, or you are a conspirator or a collaborator with Blackrock. In the opening video, the fraud exposed and explained. I'm going to play that video just a minute here. It exposes and explains the fraud. And this is something I state as a matter of authority. IPG, Patriot, Leah and Michelle, the ResistanceChicks mom. I am representing God. I am His ordained government with the Founding Fathers. We the people are the higher power and authority. We reign as kings and high priests over the land God has called us to. Romans 13, obey the government. They are ordained by God, so am I. I represent the people of Ohio. I accuse these men before all other people of this crime. They must be arrested and held accountable before God and all assets returned. It is called God's Jubilee. Well, that's not very big. The Bible says, obey the authorities. Submit yourself to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto the governors, as unto them that sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of the foolish men. 1 Peter 2:13 through 15. Now, before you get all upset or something, who is the rightful government, and who are the principalities, who are the king, or who is supreme, who is the governor? Well, we the people are. We have all the power and authority. It's given to us by God, and we took on the power. If you look at the Declaration of Independence in the background here, you'll see in the background here the Declaration of Independence that we the people, it says in there, I have it memorized, we have taken on the powers of government as we the people. Christianity, each person is king and high priest of God. And this man is saying, I am exploding this no matter what. Mike Malone, gold and silver. And when they return all the assets that are held accountable before God, and all the assets are returned, it is called God's Jubilee. So I'm going to play a lot of it.
Go on the Federal Reserve's website and you look for the attributes of what is money? What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. And after that, they go medium of exchange, unit of account, and all these other things, fungible and divisible and all that other stuff. And so I came up with a couple of questions that you can ask somebody. If somebody is insisting, no, you're wrong, the euro is money. No, you're wrong, the dollar is money. Ask them, does money have to be a store of value? Is that one of its attributes? And if they say yes, ask them, is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. And national fiat currencies, all of them on this planet now, are borrowed into existence and they're owed back plus interest. But the currency to pay the interest doesn't exist yet. It wasn't borrowed into existence. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1, and you're going to owe that plus $1 worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually. Now there's $2 in existence. One is disappearing into the debt payment, but now you've got $4. There's $2 of interest and $2 of debt, and $1 is vanishing to pay off the principal on the first loan. Whenever you borrow currency into existence, whether it's from a bank or whether it's the central bank doing it, the currency appears as a double entry bookkeeping thing. There's a debt and a credit and these two things. When you make payments, you're extinguishing the debt that is owed on that balance sheet with the currency that you save up. And so the principal vanishes, but the interest is still owed. And so in our society, there are constantly more loans being made than there are paid. And so if you're talking about M2 currency supply, you're talking about 90% bank credit. And so you go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan document you have to agree to. They just check you out and see if they think you can repay it. And if they think so, then here's the loan document. Your signature hits that paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account. And at the same time, there is a debt owed to the bank on that loan. And so this brand new imagined currency just appears. And when you make the payments on the principal, it vanishes. However, you then have to save up some of the existing pool of currency that is always being borrowed into existence and pay the interest, which is the bank's profit and pays all of the employees and pays for the building and everything else. And it goes out and it circulates. But the point is, those dollars that you're paying with, they were borrowed into existence. They're somebody else's principal that was borrowed into existence just in the currency pool. The more you
take time to think about this. When you borrow the money for your car, you borrow the money right now on your credit cards, you borrow the money for your house, whatever you borrowed money, your college education, it doesn't exist. But you go to a bank or you go somewhere, you go to government, and you just expect it to be there. But they're just making it up out of thin air. It does not exist. And so they tell you, go get a job and pay your bills on time. You know, don't steal. But the money itself is stolen, and it just doesn't exist. And Michelle was online today, and she did a little video about how Amos Miller won the case of being a farmer. That he can grow his own food. He can raise his own animals. He can make cheese. He can make sour cream. He can make yogurt. He can take his cow and cut it up into steaks and ground beef and hamburger and roast, and he can sell it. And that's how we should all have or make our living. When America was started, so we don't have to have fake printed money out of thin air, and we don't have this problem. America, 95% of men farm. We came here to own land, farm, and you don't need money, you need seeds. You don't need money, you need 2 horses to multiply horses. You don't need money, you need 2 pigs, a male and a female, and multiply pigs. You don't need money, you need a chicken and a rooster. These are the things that you can do all by yourself, so we can stop being thieves, because our money isn't real. It does not exist.
Dig into the monetary system, the more you figured out that this is just such an illusion. It is just, it's amazing. And it's really important right now for everybody to start learning this stuff, because we're about to go through some enormous changes in just the next few years. This decade is going to see some upheavals in the monetary system. I do believe that gold and silver are going to be the big winners in all of this. There's 2 forms of base currency. The first is the paper notes that are in your wallet, and that is an IOU from the Federal Reserve if you live in the United States, the ECB if you're in Europe, Bank of England if you're in England. So the paper notes are one form of base currency, and they used to be the vast majority of base currency. But then with quantitative easing, Ben Bernanke, because of the mechanics of the way quantitative easing works, base currency sort of gets trapped in this second form of the base currency, which is bank reserves. Bank reserves are a dollar that the public never sees, touches, or interacts with. It is something that is only used for interbank settlement and interbank loans. So they're borrowing and lending to one another. And then if I pay you and I write a check to you and you go and cash that check, your bank is going to contact my bank and tell them that you've got a check from me, and they'll make $1,000 worth of the imagined bank credit currency digits, these dollars that are just digits, which the Bank of England actually states these digits are reminders that the bank owes you an IOU. They aren't even an IOU. The bank owes you the paper note IOUs, the base currency IOUs. So there's about $2 trillion worth of base currency IOUs that we use in circulation, paper notes. The banks use that for just interbank settlement. The vast majority of the currency supply, about 90% of M2, is bank credit currency. So these are, like I said, digits in your bank account that remind the bank that it owes you that many central bank IOUs. Today's fiat currency is a trade of nothing for something, which is a fraud. And, they're inventing digits that are reminders to pay IOUs. And when they do, it dilutes the IOU supply that is out there, the M2 IOU supply, and thereby steals purchasing power from all the existing units of currency. We saw that in the stock market with QE, in the inflation. They don't measure there's something I came up with a long time ago called CUP inflation, CUPP, currency units per person, and nothing else really matters. In the long run, if the CPI also included the stock market, real estate, and so on, then they would get an accurate measure of inflation that reflected the growth of the currency supply. Because there is one truth: every dollar created has to go somewhere. If people can if they can discern the difference between currency and money, it makes a huge difference in your life, and it shows you how you are being robbed by the system. The system benefits the few at the expense of the many. When they do QE, because of the mechanism of QE, they can only make their asset purchases through their primary dealers, which are these big brokerage houses and such. And when they do that, it means that they are funneling currency directly into the stock markets, the primary dealers can buy either directly from the treasury or they can buy from the open market. And so the Fed wants some bonds, or they want some mortgage-backed securities, and they go out there and they make a purchase. And if it happens to be from a pension fund or something, a pension fund may decide to replace that bond that was just purchased with stocks. The correlation between the rise, I mean, from QE 1, 2, and 3, if the base currency increased by 10%, the stock market would go up 10%. If it increased by 20%, the stock market would go up by 20%. The correlations are astounding. And so when you do that, when you dilute the currency supply and spend that new currency into one area, one sector, that area becomes warped, but it's robbing from the other area as it does it. This is what kept all of the groceries and gasoline and stuff down for so many years. They were having trouble creating that inflation because the mechanics of the way they create inflation is to inflate the stock market, and that's it.
So it's all fraud. And that was Bullion News. I'm exposing this no matter what, Mike Malone, and gold and silver price. But we can fix it. We the people have this power that we can fix it. Working Horse with Jim, I've come to the conclusion that was the title of show 773. Jubilee. Year Jubilee. Historically, at the Jubilee, all the debts were canceled. All of the slaves were set free, and all the land was returned to the rightful owner. And so what used to happen is people would sell themselves basically into slavery because the money doesn't exist. Right now, if you had to pay it all with gold and silver, you don't have it. And all your money is actually not real. And so you would have to sell yourself into slavery today. And that's when we're using real money and we're being honest with each other. But in a year of Jubilee, all the debts are canceled. This is a physical example of the spiritual truths that are fulfilled in Jesus Christ and will be finished at his second coming. We don't believe in second coming. That's just something I copied and pasted off the internet. I mean, he already came. He's only going to come once. That's it. The debt of sin is canceled. The slaves of sin are set free, and the rulership of the earth will return to Jesus Christ. He did that 2,000 years ago. So we've all been set free, but we have to go back to our childhood and get our minds back that were taken from us through public school and all this indoctrination through our entire lives. We've been brainwashed into believing this money is real, and it's not. And when you face gold and silver and you face the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, you start to get your own free mind back from the lies that you've taught and you've been trained on and basically brainwashed into. And I'm saying obey God first. The following blog is a lot of people giving proof and evidence that I am submitting to the world to review and study to empower all men to be free men, no longer slaves. And this is what happens as soon as you find a sin or you have something you did wrong and you find it and you discover it. I do this in all my blogs. When as soon as I find a error in my typing or a word that's not spelled right, I just saw no longer, there was an E missing. I fix it right away. Don't hesitate to fix it right away, and then it won't grow. And the Bible says that sin is and words are like a seed planted, and whatever you do, you plant it, it will grow, unless you nip it in the bud and get it right away. And so when somebody does something wrong, you want to stop it right away so it doesn't grow into a big weed in your life. Because what happens if one lie leads to another lie, leads to another lie, leads to another lie, and that's why we get this huge America, trillions and trillions of debts, because it's just lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. The government just keeps growing because it's lies upon lies upon lies upon lies. But I believe there's a Jubilee coming. We've had plenty of signs and wonders in the skies since 2014. There was these triads and other things, and God speaks to you in the stars. He's been speaking for quite some time. And 2014 and 21, so that's 7 years. I was just going through the numbers real fast in my mind. So we're going to submit to the world to review and study to empower all men to be free men, no longer slaves, to get their lives right with God and return to their great-great-grandfather's land that has been robbed. The whole idea of a jubilee is all debts are canceled because people had to sell their lands or they had to sell themselves to slavery. All that's canceled and you return back to your land. And since 1933 or even 1913 with the Federal Reserve, they've been slowly stealing from everybody. And with the invention of tractors, where farmers couldn't keep up with competition because farmers, like you just saw Jim, use horses. And horses are free. And once you buy a horse, you can start multiplying. You never have to buy another horse. And Jim has all this land, so he feeds his own horse off his own hay that he grows himself off the land. So his horses really don't cost a lot of money, except for if they need a veterinarian or if they need ivermectin for deworming or if they need their feed, horseshoes put on. But that's the way we all should be living and not having to buy a car. Because cars just keep getting more and more expensive. Everything just gets more and more expensive. And you just need more and more fake money. And it's a vicious cycle of perpetual debt. And that God doesn't want that. So God has a jubilee to cancel all debts. It's a very biblical thing to do. Because that just happens. So to get their lives right with God, return to their great-great-grandfather's land that has been robbed. So that happened in 1913. They started making this fake money. In 1933, they started stealing the land. So people had to be dependent on others to provide for them. And they were kicked off their land, used property taxes, kicked people off their lands, income taxes, kicked people out. It was a real vicious, fraudulent system. But all that should be canceled and every return back to the great-great-grandfather's land was taken from them through this deception. Land they now own because God showed it to them. Well, no doubt, you get close enough to God, he will tell you what land you own, what land was your great-great-grandfather's. Like he showed the Israelites the promised land and Abraham's promised land, and that's Israel, right? And so all of us can know which land is our family, our inheritance, what is our promised land. God speaks to people, and you can know because God doesn't want you in sin. So you can know if you're living somewhere it's a sin or not. And of course, if you use counterfeit money, it's probably a sin. But you got to go back to your great-great-grandfathers and not be a collaborator or help these people continue this cycle of it's endless suffering. So land they now own because God showed it to them. This is their territory to govern. See, we're called to be kings and priests over the land. As Christians, once you come to God, and God shows that this is a land you are to live on, and this is your territory to protect and keep safe. And God gives men land. This is how God provides for people. Promised land. The land provides for people. Now, the land provides for us. I got that in a dream from the Lord. I got wisdom from the Lord that men should build their houses with their own two hands, and that's scripture. That's 1 Thessalonians 4:11 through like 13 or 14. You should build your own house. You should be totally independent. And that's why we have the Declaration of Independence, why we have the right to own land. The pursuit of happiness originally means the right to own land and have a farm. Everybody has that right, and they can't charge you property taxes for something you own. There is plenty of land. There's plenty of land. You can't imagine how much land there is. It is, and it has to be very low priced to purchase. I'll repeat that sentence. The land actually has a very low price to purchase because it is almost unlimited like sand. A lot of people, you don't know me, I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it again. We took a 3,000-mile bicycle trip from Oklahoma down to Florida. We went through Oklahoma to Washington, D.C., and down to Florida. 3,000 miles on bicycles. There is more land than you can possibly imagine. But most people are forced into cities, and so it looks like you have overpopulation. No, you just have people crammed into cities and into jobs, and that's very, very evil. There are tons and tons of acres of lands out there. It's like I said, it's like sand to sea. You can never run out of land. It should be very, very cheap because there's so much of it. It's everywhere. I mean, you can't run out of land, and you can't run it. It can't be overpopulated. But John Locke, we'll get to him later, he said in his second treatise government, if somebody has more than they need, then they're being selfish, and that's wrong. That's a sin. It's being greedy. And so that's like against the law. And I said thread here. I went and I decided to make this blog, so I put it in Minds, and I gave it a 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 13, and said this is a thread. Then I took it and put it into this blog, and I'm going to try to read it out loud. I won't be able to get through it tonight, of course not. It'll take 3 or 4 times of reading this out loud. Maybe I'll take Saturday nights and just read this out loud. Of course not. I'm going to get it done and over with. I'm not that type of person to do that. But there'll be part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to this. PG here for Silver Squeeze 2025. In 2021, Silver Squeeze update. Arcadia Economics. It isn't over. The Silver Squeeze, people mostly think it was over, ended in 21, never went anywhere. And even the guy on this show said it didn't go anywhere, they failed, but that's not true. It will be done very soon, maybe this month. At 6 minutes, we the people are taking on the banks, taking silver out of circulation. The deep state, evil men, are in a state of war against the people. Not the Chinese Art of War. You don't want to read that book. You want because God isn't going to help that person. That is cardinal of the flesh and demonic. Read John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, Chapter 3 of the State of War. He was a very godly, free man, and he gives you answers and solutions. The Second Treatise of Government, the Letter Concerning Toleration, Dover Thrift Edition by John Locke. His wisdom, John Locke's wisdom, is from Almighty God. The Art of War is Chinese wisdom. It's very messed up. And John Locke's Savior is Jesus Christ. Anyone trying to subdue you, to put you into subjugation or slavery, or anyone trying to harm you or make you join them without your consent has declared a state of war against your God-given right to freedom. And that's what our government has done, and that's what these counterfeiters have done. That's what Blackrock and all these people have done. Even President Trump trying to go to Mars. It's not declaration. It's not the government's right to go to Mars. There's nowhere in there that's you can go to Mars. That's not the government's job. Okay? The government there is to keep our rights and protect our rights to own land and farm and live in peace with our neighbor and make sure everything's done fair and justly. That's what a government's for. Okay, they've really gone out of their minds. Some call it a spiritual warfare. A spiritual war means the devil or demons are making men sin and harm others. Our weapons are from God, not carnal. They are mighty through God's strength and the Holy Spirit to pulling down these principalities and powers. And pulling down. God working with us with signs and miracles following. Where does their power come from? Satan in rebellion to God. And it's Amos 8. And in Amos 8, they are using silver to enslave men, making silver small and gold big. Then they they use false weights and balances. That's what counterfeiting money is all about. That's what your fiat is. It's false weights and balances. They just print them in. They make all the laws about money out of thin air. It's all false weights and balances. And that's in Amos 8. And in James 5, it's all about printing counterfeit money. It's alchemy. Now, I just want to give you scripture to back up what other men are saying. They just tell you it's wrong. But Christians, we need to obey God and God only. We need proof in the Bible that it is wrong. I'm going to bring up Amos 8 real quick. I'm just going to grab one here. They're saying the businessmen, they're saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn? Because on the new moon they have to take off a holy day or whatever in the Jewish festival at the Sabbath. They want to get out there and start robbing people. They want to get business started. That we might set forth wheat. And remember in Revelations, talk about wheat. Make the ephah small and the shekel great. And falsifying the balances by deceit. A shekel is a gold coin. And so I just assumed the ephah, part of the silver. That's what they do. Right now the silver is like $30, while gold is like $3,000, which is ridiculous because 10 silver dollars make up one gold piece. So you can't have that imbalance. It's one gold piece to 15 amount. It's 1 to 15 ratio. How much gold and how much silver is in the coins. So right now it's like 80 to 1 or something ridiculous. It's stupid. And it's right here in this scripture in Amos 8. I just want people to read that. And the whole thing, the reason they make gold like really 3,000 something and the silver is that they might buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. Yea, sell the refuse of the wheat. And the Lord has sworn in his excellence of Jacob, surely I will never forget any of their works. Shall not the land tremble for this, and everyone mourn that dwell therein? And it shall rise up holy as a flood, and it shall flood, and it shall be cast down and drowned as the flood of Egypt. And it goes on to say, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor thirst of water, but hearing the words of God. So nobody's hearing the word of God. In the foundation of this country, and for like 400 or 500 years, if not all the way back to 2,000 years, everybody knew what the Bible said. Everybody knew what the Word of God said. It's only in the last 100, even 50 years, only 50 years that people don't know the Bible. Before that, they all knew it. Everybody knew it. And Jesus, God says, even they shall fall and never rise again. That's the bad guys. They'll never come back, and God won't let it happen to destroy us all. So I'm going on to another one. How close the Silver Squeeze came to breaking the market. Rick ruled back in 2021. The silver market had an event that came to be known as the Silver Squeeze, which led to a brief spike in the price and surge in investment demand. That 2 months later would lead to LBMA to say had demand in shares in continued at the frantic rate of late January, early February, it would only be a matter of weeks before London's existing stock was used up. So basically, we were using up all their stock of gold and silver by buying it all. So I told you in the beginning, it was around the end of January, the beginning of February, we were part of it. Alex Jones was a part of it. And it was called the Silver Squeeze. And when London's existing stock was just about used up. So we knew we could break the bank. That's the counterfeiting money. Because real money is gold and silver. So you have gold, you have silver, you have real money, and you have power and authority. Because you're not a counterfeiter anymore. They're just counterfeiters. God's not with them. Yet the lesser known story is what was happening behind the scenes with the Sprout PSLV Trust, which was clearing out the existing silver inventories in multiple cities. And that's this guy, his trust. They were cleaning out the cities at the same time. They're a provider of silver for people, order silver from them, and then they go around and buy it from different cities or different banks in order to fill a need, because everything's, you got lights on right now, you got a computer, got a cell phone, they all have silver in them. This silver is needed worldwide for electronics, and you can't have solar panels, you can't have anything electronic without silver. So this guy here was going behind the scenes, clearing out multiple cities' inventories of silver. And they almost used up all London's. In this clip, Rick Rule, who had a unique access to the silver market due to his role with the PSLV Trust, talked about how close the market came to breaking, whether he expects it to happen again. And whether he expects it to happen again. And another man has written a book, and that's where I got this picture from, The Silver Squeeze of 2025. So I'll just bring up some of these pictures I haven't brought up. So if you want to go and get this book, this is great. What I'm telling you, I've only gotten through page 7 of this small little book, The State of War. And I'm able to use it already. This book is packed with information. It only has like 200 pages. It's amazing. This was the Silver Squeeze, Wall Street Bets. A group of people, and on Reddit, they all did this. They all went and started buying silver, and we encourage everybody to buy silver. And this is what's going to happen. This is what they're talking about. I think this is from Jerusalem Times, this picture that silver is about to go through the roof. It's needed. Everybody needs it. All your manufacturers, all your little chip makers, computer chip makers, all the people around the world, they need silver. They have to have it. But they keep the price suppressed so they can buy it on the cheap. And they don't care about gold because they don't need gold as much in manufacturing as they do silver. Now, this is called Acadia economics. And so most people say, what's Acadia mean? Now, English speakers use of Arcadia to designate a place of rustic innocence and simple, quiet pleasure. Arcadia can mean idyllical, pastoral, or idyllical, innocent, simple, or untroubled. And so he calls himself Arcadia economics, for peaceful economics. And basically, you're just being honest people. So I'm going to open up and then go to 6 and then go to 14. Because it's 21 minutes, I can't play the whole thing.
That year, they mentioned had the demand continued at that pace that they were weeks away from running out, which I certainly took notice of that statement. So based on what you're saying, are able to venture any sort of feel for how close do you think back in 2021 when this was happening, you said eventually in London they were able to fill what you needed. Are you able to get any idea of how close we actually might have come to a break point back then?
Not a clue. If what happened at that point in time would have been accompanied by a liquidity squeeze, a market event like 2008, it would have been game over. If you would have seen credit restricted in the futures market against good delivery failures, in the cash market, it would have been game over.
Rick, there's something I've been wanting to ask you for a while because this actually goes back to the Silver Squeeze in 2021, amazingly, almost 4 years ago now. And obviously a lot happened there, although what I found particularly interesting, you were running or involved with the PSLV Trust back then. And I heard a couple of interviews where you mentioned that, initially it was more just the retail product that got caught offside on that one weekend, yet later as more money kept coming into PSLV to fill the demands because you can't have, well, the metal's coming or it's over here, we're going to get it. And you talked about how you cleared out a couple of different cities of their silver supply, and perhaps we could start there and then I might have a couple questions to tack on.
That was an interesting experience. I had anticipated that the silver market was broad enough that it could accommodate our demand in almost any size. And while the silver market is very, very, very broad, the silver market was then, and I would suggest is today, much more liquid, or much less liquid than you believe. While there's a lot of supply in places like private ownership by the Indian peasantry, that isn't good delivery silver. And in the case of the Sprott Physical Trust, we could only buy silver that was, in the LBME or in the COMEX good delivery form.
Right.
And we were having days when there was $50 million of inflow into our physical silver trust. No problem, says Rick. We clean out Toronto. Okay. We go to Montreal. Clean out Montreal. Interesting. Well, no problem. We go to Chicago. We clean out Chicago. This is becoming concerning. The market's front running us. We go to New York. We clean out New York. It turned out that London was ultimately able to accommodate us. But London wasn't able to accommodate us overnight, which is what we were used to. We were used to buying silver and having the silver go from somebody else's pile in a vault through a screen to our pile in a vault. What happened was that we cleaned out all the piles until we ran into the final piles in London and Zurich, which accommodated us. I actually think that the young adherents to the silver squeeze were onto something. I think their problem was that they bought a long-term narrative and they took in short-term tactics. I actually believe that there are imbalances in the silver market, in particular between the physical market and the paper market.
Maybe next year will be the year. Although, Rick, I remember shortly.
Well, remember that a lot of the retail participation in the silver squeeze abdicated. They haven't held the silver for 5 years. When silver didn't meet their expectation, they liquidated in favor of meme stocks, in favor of Bitcoin, in favor of some other speculative asset. So 5 years would have involved them continuing to, in their parlance, stack. That didn't happen. They decided to take on the banks, and the banks kicked their ass. Let's get this straight. It doesn't change the equation. What the silver apes hope to cause to occur will be done by the market in the market's own time. It will take place, likely without the apes.
Inventories come down over the past 3 years. I don't, as you pointed out, I wouldn't say we're in code red territory where they're scrambling for the last bar by any means, but obviously you're very involved in the equity side, and we've talked to miners, talked to analysts, fund managers, and there's not a lot of money going in there. Even had a couple spurts this year from my perspective where a couple of times you had gold or silver up, a good percentage on a few days in a row, and money came in, but we're not having capital go in to address this deficit. It's almost like you have a deficit, and rather than working things over time, getting permits done quickly, we're seeing the opposite of that. Is it possible we get to the point where there is some sort of shortage on the industrial side, or how do you see that all fitting together?
I think the deficit is bigger than we think it is, because I think the informal supply was bigger than we thought it was. I remember all the way back to the middle part of the decade of the 80s when Buffett suddenly reported to the world that he owned 15% of the world's above ground supplies of silver, that is to say, reported supplies. And the silver price just shot. That's before you were in the racket, I think. The silver price just shot up and then it collapsed. And of course, all the silver bugs said manipulation. That's wrong. What happened is that the Indian rupee fell by 50% in US dollar terms, and the price of silver went up by 200% in US dollar terms. So from the point of view of the Indian peasantry, the price of their silver went up by 400%. And that occurred in conjunction with a bad harvest in India, where the Indian peasants had a choice between keeping their silver and feeding their kids. Well, it was pretty straightforward. And a whole bunch of silver came out of inventory from a place that we didn't know it had been in inventory. The understanding that I have, and it's a very informal understanding, But the understanding that I have with the Gujarati precious metals trading community, an informal community, I call them traders, their government calls them smugglers, is that there has been substantial physical dishoarding of silver that has accompanied the reduction in the exchange rate between the Indian rupee and the US dollar. And I think that the offtake of physical silver from informal hoarders in emerging markets in favor of industrial application has been greater than we believe it is. We can observe it in official sectors. We can observe dishoarding from industrial refiners like Inglehart. What we don't see is the informal dishoarding that's taken place. And I suspect that the informal dishoarding has been much greater than we believe. And I think that the consequence of that will be that if I'm right about the direction of precious metals prices, that the adjustment, if that's the right word, between the paper market and the physical market could be, maybe not will be, but could be much more dramatic than we believe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And perhaps the last one for you here today. You touched on this a little bit before when you were mentioning, we were talking about the amount of silver that's been sold back, but looking at it a different way, I'd say in the past 5 years, we've seen a shift in gold where if you told people 5 years ago, hey, central banks are going to be buying in the amounts they are, and we're going to see governments and central banks start to look at things differently. So we've seen a shift in gold. I don't know that I would say we've seen that in silver. Certainly within the precious metals community, there have been new people who have come in. Yet, if my mom didn't know me, she wouldn't be close to picking up the phone to buy silver yet. Do you still expect that we'll see some surge?
You make the most important of all points, which is to say that the strength in gold is not retail strength. The retail has not been buying it. No. The central banks have been buying it. If you measure popular sentiment around gold with cash inflows to the ETFs, you only saw 5 months of positive flow into ETFs. Right now, you're selling retail selling of gold and retail selling of silver. Why did gold respond and silver not? Well, that's simple. Central banks buy gold. With the exception of stated intentions by the Russians, central banks don't buy silver. So a market that moves as a consequence of the participation of one buyer probably doesn't move in a sector where that buyer isn't focused. I believe that the motivations for central bank buying, one being the weaponization of the US dollar and the extraterritorial imposition of US will, has been partially responsible for central bank buying of gold. I also believe that the calculus around the US dollar, which we talked about earlier, a currency where they pay you 4.2%, where the real purchasing power of the currency is declining by 7.5%, has also led to the selling of US treasuries and the buying of gold by foreign countries. And when that simple calculus becomes apparent to retail on a global basis, then I think you see a real precious metals bull market. When you see continued central bank buying, continued official sector buying, and you see net inflows to the gold ETFs, then the market gets legs.
So that's Arcadia Economics. That's Chris Marcus and Rick Rule. So basically he said it takes 5 years for this silver squeeze to actually do what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to destroy the power of the counterfeiters. The government of America just keeps counterfeiting, and governments around the world keep counterfeiting and printing money out of thin air. And I'm sure you've heard of the digital currency, right? Well, digital currency has been happening since 1913, basically, in 1933. They make money out of thin air. And your businesses that keep growing and get bigger and bigger and bigger, they have deals with the banks, where the banks just add numbers and make money and loan money to businesses out of thin air. So when you get a paycheck, you're getting that out of thin air. Your business never had the money because the banks never had the money to loan it, to buy the supplies, to run your business. It's all done out of thin air. So the business side and the government side has been using digital currency, but they get away with it by giving Americans cash or credit cards, so you feel like you have some kind of wealth. And especially if you own cash or coins, you think you have real wealth, but you don't. It's all basic out of thin air. And so they've been using digital currency since the beginning of this century, 19th century. So here we're going to hear from the Lynette. PG here, gold confiscation. Is it legal? Stealing. Why? Hyperinflation. When men use gold and silver coins, that's you and me. When the people, we the people with all the power, because we're the ones, we are the government. Remember at the beginning of my opening, I said, I have the power. I have the authority. I am the government. And the founding fathers are the government. The people that are running the place are just a bunch of thieves. Blackrock and all these other people, your senators, your congressmen, your presidents, are all the thieves counterfeiting money out of thin air, and they give themselves wealth and make laws out of thin air. But when we have the power, we have the gold and silver. And that's where the silver squeeze shows the people's power, when all the people take all the silver, because right now silver is like 90% off, whereas gold is like overvalued compared to the silver. So when men use gold and silver coins, God's money, legal money, honest money, you easily end all the corruption. It is easy to track how the government and others are spending money when we tell the government, you're going to use gold and silver. You're not going to print money out of thin air. We're not going to do with this gold-backed money or paper anymore. We're not going to use these credit cards anymore. We want to see the gold. We want to see the silver. You end corruption, and we have the power to do that because we are the government, and the Constitution says they have to use gold and silver. It is easy to track how the government and others are spending money. Gold, said Kim Clement, gold and silver in the hands of the people. Then the people are the power. The results are the government fears God and the people. Each individual should be holding the gold and silver. The example is in the first 300 years of American history since 1920 when the Pilgrims landed. Those holding the gold hold the power and the control. So when you have gold or silver, silver is kind of like a derivative of gold. It's kind of in copper. When you go mine gold, you're going to find silver and copper. The Constitution states that people must hold the gold and silver equal to having a weapon. This need for you to have gold in your hands and silver in your hands is almost a commandment of the Constitution, equal to having a weapon. The Second Amendment says each man must have a gun each man must have a gun or a weapon in his possession. That's the Second Amendment. So we always have a ready militia to defend the country and defend the nation. You're responsible. It's your right, your duty, and your responsibility to have a gun. Always ready to defend the country. It is your right, your duty, to hold gold and silver, to keep your power and not be a criminal or a cheat or a thief or a counterfeiter of fake dollar bills, printing things out of thin air. Okay, so the Constitution does state that people must hold gold and silver, equal to having a weapon like the Second Amendment, ready to defend yourself and the state from tyranny. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, each state, nation, country must hold gold and silver coins. Each person must use gold and silver coins. It is the law of God. It's the law of the Constitution of the nation. That is why ResistanceChicks are proud to partner with Zhang Enterprises as the new official gold and silver company of the ResistanceChicks. And you can click here to find out more about God's money. So it talks all about Zhang Enterprises and Lynette, who she is, what she does, how she does it. And you can click here to get your strategy call. And you can talk to all the people she has. It's not very often that you find people you just fit with. But when you do, what amazing things can grow from it. For the past 7 years, Resistance Chicks have been proud to feature Lynette Zhang on our program, share her videos, and glean from her decades of wisdom and experience. But more than that, her heart to get back to the land, grow food, and build communities aligns so much with the heart of the Resistance Chicks. Gold and silver truly are God's money, but even more than that, God wants us to work with Him in His creation. Ever since we found Lynette was venturing into her own enterprise, we have been excited to see what God does through her phenomenal team. Now we are thrilled to join with Lynette Zhang Enterprises on their journey and look forward to seeing what God will build in this incredible partnership. Lynette and her team of experts help people to best prepare for economic uncertainty with Lynette's mantra on how to be equipped in the key areas of food, water, energy, security, wealth preservation, barterability, shelter, and last but certainly not least, community. Resistance Chicks fully support this mantra and encourage you to contact the team at Zhang Enterprise today. Best of all, there are no minimum purchase. Anyone can start exiting the fiat currency system and get into God's money. Lynette's heart is to help everyone out of the system, and so it is ours. And then we've done several interviews with her. You can click there and go to that. And this is where you schedule a consultation with Zhang Enterprise. Like I said, if you make an error, you make a mistake, repent real fast and fix it right away. That's why you'll find me on here, on air, fixing mistakes. It's an example for you to follow. But I'll finish up here with the Silver Squeeze. It's not over. It could be over this year. And even this month.
It's so easy to confiscate your wealth, your work. Because what do? We work for money, right? And then we try to save it and accumulate it for later, any wealth, any money that we don't need today for down the road. But the whole system, the whole current fiat system is based upon constantly compounding inflation. And as long as there's some purchasing power in there to take, well, they can do that invisibly. That's the inflation tax. They can tax you without going to legislation. But for corporations, that's what this wealth and income inequality is all about, because the current system enabled that. But we're at the end of the life cycle. There's officially, and this is true globally, virtually no purchasing power left. We're all experiencing more rapid inflation, which is part of the deal, but have they lost control of that? Because even the central bankers have admitted, Christine Lagarde, that they don't understand inflation, which is why they used it in the system, because they knew people don't understand it. They get married to the numbers rather than the utility. And even wages, right? I mean, the average wage back in 1971 was something like $9,500, and a family of four could live with one wage earner. Today, it's like $57,000. It takes two wage earners. You're still paycheck to paycheck. There are a lot of people that are earning up to $250,000 a year that are paycheck to paycheck. So yeah, that nominal confusion, and they knew that. That's why they created the system based on that nominal confusion. The reason why we see a division, right, between the West and the East, China, Russia, India, those countries are, central banks globally are accumulating more gold than they ever have before, even more than 1967 when we were in the middle of this transition. But whoever holds the gold retains the power, retains the choice. And so what we're actually experiencing is a shift in financial power on a global basis from the West, from the US, to the East, to China. And the other piece that's really critical to understand is the huge advantage that the US has had since the 40s as the world reserve currency. But no currency retains that forever. And we are rapidly, very rapidly losing that status. But that didn't just start, that started in 2000. 2000 was the first time historically that our central bank had to start buying back our government debt. But they didn't broadcast it. It wasn't because it's not a good thing. It only became a good thing in 2009 with quantitative easing and all that stuff. So what I see for us here in the U.S. and actually everywhere is I think we'll go into a hyperinflationary depression because they've got to burn off the debt. If they're going to issue new currency based on debt, then they have to get rid of the debt. And if you listen to the talking heads on Bloomberg, CNBC, wherever, and they're talking about growth, well, they're talking about the ability to take on more debt. And I don't care if you're a government, a corporation, or an individual, most are maxed out in their ability to take on more debt. So I see a transition away from the US dollar easily, and it's speeding up. It's speeding up. Timing is, the hardest thing for any technician. I can tell you what is most likely to happen based upon lots and lots of history. But we're at the end game right now. And I think what we are witnessing is a complete breakdown of the system, because the system actually died in 2008. And it was simply put on life support, and that life support is just the money just printed, right? That's all that is that was the life support, because that's all that they have is boosting up their balance sheet with lots and lots of garbage, buying back lots and lots of treasuries. But we already saw a lack of liquidity in the treasury market in 2015. And so that lack of liquidity, the ability to buy and sell easily without big dislocations, look at what's happening right now in the treasury market, and understand that the treasury market is the foundation of the global financial system. If you watch the patterns, you could see when the Fed handed over the management of the treasury market in 2013 to the traders. Now, of course, they don't report that, the treasury VIX, like they did anymore, because they don't really want you to see what's happening. But you now have traders making bets on the default of the treasury market as early as, June 1st. And the government so divided, and I can't really tell you whether this is intentional or not intentional, because when you know you're at the end and you know you're going to declare bankruptcy, if somebody gives you a credit card, what are people most likely to do? Go max it out, because you know it. I mean, I think we are precariously close, and what we're experiencing between the issues that are happening around the banking system and inflation and the treasury markets and the transition to a completely new interest rate benchmark, which is, if you're going to have interest, that's debt, right? To be perfectly honest with you in this, what I am seriously seeing is that whoever holds the gold, and this is why the central bankers are accumulating it so much, are the ones that are going to have the choice and at the forefront of this new world order, which everybody is now talking about. But I've been talking about a reset socially, financially, and economically since 2009. And I think it was 2015, but don't hold me to it. And it's one of my favorite reports that they've ever done, which is called Breaking Below the Lower Zero Bound. So how they can take the whole world negative, right? Negative rates, they want us to think that negative rates are a choice, but why in the world would you bust your butt to earn this money and loan it to somebody other than your children, knowing you're not going to get back what you're loaning, right? That is completely illogical, but they can force it. So they can force you to spend, they can dictate where you're going to spend it. And Ford recently came out and got the patent, and the IMF had talked about this, got a patent on the self-driving cars. So if you do not, all these smart houses, the smart cars, and all of this smart stuff, well, that has the smart contracts on there. And if you miss a payment, then they can lock you out of the car and drive the car away. They can lock you out of your house, and what are you going to do? So, yeah, you have to do things that can ensure that you are as independent and self-sufficient as possible.
I'm going to do this one more with Lynette, and then I have a huge blog here. It goes on and on and on and on and on. It gives hope to all of us. But this will be like part 1. So let's do last one for Lynette, and then we'll go on another day, maybe tomorrow night or the next night. I'll do another, read some more. Of course, you can always go to Isaiah 58 Ministries blogspot.com, where I have all my blogs, and the address is right there in the link in the description. And you can read through the whole thing and watch all the videos. Lynette Zhang is one very wise but very honest person. Everyone can profit from what she has to say. We have followed her for at least 7 years. She was on ITM trading. She just turned 70 years old. But like the eagle, she broke off the old and started with a brand new. In her retirement, she started her own company to fight for her children, for our freedom. She told you about the smart cities and everything, and the smart cars, but she wants to stop it. She thinks it's unfair, it's unjust. So in her own company, with the company she was with, she was an employee. This way she's running it, and she can fight for our freedoms. For grandchildren and for Americans. Her goal is to return each state to honest money. When the people hold the money, gold and silver coins, the people are in power. She works for the states using honest money. She has joined a team of people around the United States of America. They go to all the governments trying to get all of them to go back to the gold and silver standard, because the states hold all the power. It's United States. Each state is a country, a nation of its own. And each state turns to gold and silver, honest money. The United States loses more power the more it loses control over each state. So each state takes it back its own power by having its own gold and silver as money. And I wrote this a long time ago, a blog, The Black Horse, the Book of Revelations, and in his hand is a rider, had a pair of scales, the power to get wealth. God gave us the power to get wealth, and that's gold and silver. A quart of wheat for a denarius or a silver dime. A whole day's wage, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, a silver dime. And those are flour sacks. But I have several blogs on that I wrote years ago. ResistanceChicks are proud to be partners with Lynette Zhang. And let me see if I get this to work. Yes, it went right to it. So I had to write an address on that one. So you can click there. And then on that one, then you click to another one. And then you go where you can schedule an appointment with Lynette. I want to bring this up here. See if we get YouTube to come up right.
So I want to talk today about intangible gold derivatives. Okay? A derivative is derived from something, but you can't actually convert it necessarily into that. Some you can, some you can't. And the conversion is more of a theory because every single asset has been turned into a trading asset. Oil, gold, silver, water, air, everything. So I'm going to show you the latest. But what I want you to really understand, and you might notice is here, this is a contract, right, that is based on another contract. It does not reflect the true fundamental value of any asset. It merely reflects the trading value. But all contracts run that counterparty risk. And that's the probability of the person on the other side of that contract or the party on the other side of that contract defaulting on their contractual obligations. So when you see things that are guaranteed, like insurance policies and annuities, you need to make sure that you're reading it, because what you will also read is that it's based upon the claim's paying ability, right? So if a claim can't be paid, boop, done. All you have is a contract. Additionally, there has been another key pattern shift. Even I don't necessarily know exactly what a pattern shift means, but I can tell you it always means something. The simple fact of the matter is, since this is a contractual obligation, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And we have so many examples of that. Wall Street can manipulate the price that you see of both gold and silver. And what you're looking at here is open interest from 2010 to 2024. And open interest contracts, these are going globally. So it's the COMEX in Dubai, ICE, India, etc. So these are global open interest derivative contracts. And what you'll notice, and well, let's define that so you know what open interest even means. But that is the total number of outstanding contracts. It measures the flow of money into the futures derivatives market. So obviously you can see here how that interest has grown over the years, hitting all-time highs because of all the geopolitical uncertainty and because of all the severe overvaluations. This is an extraordinarily vulnerable market. And what is gold about? Physical gold? Well, gold is about protection. Now, they want you to think that you can do it with a contract, and a short term, you probably can. But in a currency life cycle issue, you cannot. It only looks like it for a minute until it doesn't. And I wish that I had, a better way to say that. Maybe I'll figure that out too. But the higher the number of open interest contracts, the higher the amount of activity in the futures markets. So that's both buying and selling. That's activity. That's what the open interest is showing you. And you can see that there is a lot of activity that is going on in these markets. Now what you're looking at is the net long positions. This is 2021 through 2024. That line is 0. Short positioning represents bearish or negative sentiment. So you can see not a whole lot of negative sentiment at all for traders in the gold market. The long position reflects bullish sentiment, positive sentiment. The COMEX spot gold contract, which is what you look at, what we all look at, and people think that represents gold, and it kind of does, but it doesn't represent the physical gold, though some of it will flow with that. But this is the COMEX spot contract. Okay, it has disconnected from the money manager's net long. That is a very big deal, because if you look back here, you can see that the spot contracts the net longs were actually moving the visible price that you see, but that disconnected back in 2022. And what I also want you to notice is that disconnect is growing. Pattern change. I mean, this is not rocket science. You can see it. Can you see it? Make sure that you leave the comments and have this discussion inside of the community. But this, to me, is a very big deal, because it is a reflection, or could be a reflection, of the difference or the breakdown in the ability to control the visible spot market. So what this could very well be showing us is the breakdown of that Wall Street con game. If we come together, we are an unstoppable, unbeatable army. Let's create that community, take back our power. It's that simple. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.
Basically, Lynette does sell gold and silver, but if you call her for any reason, she can take your IRAs and she can legally turn them into gold and silver, and she can help you with anything you need to to set yourself on the right path for the future so you don't get robbed in the future. We can tell you, go to a gold silver dealer and buy some gold and silver, but they do more than that. They have a consultation where you talk to them. Do you have a house? Is it paid for? Is it not paid for? How much cash are you going to need? For property taxes and for food and for electricity. They go through like a budgeting with you. And we have had several people used to be ITM trading, but then now she started her own company. ITM trading had a minimum amount you had to buy or purchase from them, whereas Lynette doesn't have any minimum value you have to purchase from her. You just be a silver dollar an ounce. But they'll help you. They'll go through what you have and anything legal you need to turn, I was going to say 401ks, IRAs, into gold or silver. You can do that to get out of the risky markets. Even your house can be risky. And they can talk you through all the ways that you can change the direction you've been using. You've been saving these dollar bills. But you heard in the one video that you get interest like 4%. But the inflation is 7 to 10%. So you are losing value in that money that you are saving. You're not going to get any interest. You're losing by holding on to dollar bills. I can't go through all of it because I'm not a consultant. Lynette has a whole team of people, and she has been doing this her whole life. I mean, she's been doing it since 1964, so she started saving gold and silver way back then. But then she was a stockbroker like in the 80s, and she got out of that because she saw it was a big ripoff. And she started with ITM trading in the early 2000s, and she worked for that company for at least 15, 16, 17 years. I don't know, 20 years. And so she knows the whole area. And she really specialized in the antiquity gold. Because in 1933, when they made it illegal to hold gold, the wealthy people had antiquity gold. That is gold that was the type that your collectors hold on to. You saw one of the little gold pieces she had was in a box because that's a collector's item. And so that's antiquity gold, collector's items. Like one gold coin can go for $1 million. That type of stuff. That's what she specializes in. And you don't have to spend that much, of course. She has all the different sizes of gold and silver, everything everybody else sells. But she really suggests people get gold or silver that they won't be confiscating if there's another confiscation. You don't want to be a part of that. The last one was, could gold be confiscated? You don't know. And so she specializes in that to try and get you in a market where if they come for people's gold and silver, they won't be taking your gold and silver. And then there's a cheaper silver, which is called junk silver, dimes and quarters. That's where the Lord led me to get gold and silver. I mean, that way. This is PG. I'm going to be signing off here, but I'll be back to finish this up because there's a lot more. But again, if you want to follow along, look in the description, and you can just read and go ahead without me reading out loud. I read out loud because some people don't have time to sit there and read something, but they have time doing the dishes to listen to me tell you what I've written down, and I'll just speak it out loud, so that's why I do this. So this is PG, signing off.
And you look for the attributes of what is money? What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. Is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1 worth of interest. And then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually. But now you've got $4. Go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account.
There's about 1,200 pages of some of the most inspiring history, foundations of government, and just about every issue under the sun that's addressed from both a biblical perspective and from the perspective of the founders who basically laid down the foundation for this nation. They had an incredible desire to see freedom for everyone. It's the first time you had elites of the world that were breaking from the world system and saying, you know what? This is not just for us. This is for the collective common man. And they laid down a foundation that would allow that to be possible. I think what's in the Founders Bible is the kind of time-tested wisdom and truth. It comes out of, David Barton is our signature historian. He's got a vault of original source documents that's second only to the Library of Congress.
Wow.
We weren't crazy that it's just, I want you to do the Founders Bible. And I'm going like, what's that? And he says, it's everything that you've been seeing and been inspired by, but feathered throughout. He said, I want people to know my purpose for this nation as a light unto the nations. This is not about some rah America thing. This is about God's desire for freedom, liberty for the common man. And, yes. But we have a good 20,000 of the hardcovers, and I have the leather soft and the heirloom edition. It's all the same interiors. They're just different bindings, but, they can order them and we can get them out. But if we don't actually understand the contract that we have kind of with God and with each other, we're never going to live it.